Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast with my buddy Jeremy from Memphis, Tennessee, and we're talking about how can you in a practical way help your staff to accomplish more. It's a great conversation. I know you're going to love this coaching time that I have with Jeremy. It's just an incredibly rich time of learning of how to bring out the best with your staff. Also want to encourage you to check out churchboom.org. I think everybody needs to run with a tribe and have a group that they are growing with together. And that's what we have. If you go to churchboom.org and check out Church Boom Network, the Church Boom Network. It's a place where you could have monthly calls with a small group of guys and just learn and grow together, come together in person once a year, and just have a tribe to run with. And so make sure to check out churchboom.org and join the network. I'm telling you, you will absolutely love it. And then also don't forget our social media platforms. We have Instagram and Facebook, Church.Boom for Instagram and Church Boom for Facebook. We have a lot of content that we put on there, so I know you'll enjoy that as well. But let's jump into the coaching conversation today. Let's jump into it, man. How can I serve you today, Jeremy?
Thank you for having me on today. I guess our first question, even from the last time we spoke was, how do we implement new systems without overwhelming your team? You ever have that typical leader, they go to a conference, they get all this information, and then they come back and they want to implement it the next day, and they kind of overwhelm their team.
Yeah.
So what's a good process on how to break that up?
Well, it is... Yeah, and believe me, I know that you get people that go to conferences, or you get guys that are just really creative and they're always thinking, and it's like, dude, you got to slow down. The team's got to catch up. Yeah. The one exercise that I love doing that I think helps monitor is something you can do in your staff or with your staff. It's called the 3x3 or a 4x4.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's nothing tricky about it. But what it does is it keeps things moving at the right rhythm. So, excuse me, a 3x3 or 4x4 is whichever one you want to do. It doesn't matter. What are the 3 things we're going to do in the next 3 months? Or what are the 4 things we're going to do in the next 4 months? So 3x3, 4x4, whatever fits for your world. This is what I love about it is... Let's say that you have a meeting. Let's say you have a staff meeting and there's a whiteboard in there. And you say to everyone, all right, man, we're going to start this thing called 4x4. Let's just say you go with that.
You're right.
But I want us to think about the top 8, 10, 11, 12, whatever things that we need to work on, that we know we need to work on. Man, our website, it's a mess. Our assimilation, it's a mess. This is whatever. And you come up with all this stuff that needs to get fixed, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, you guys are all committed to this, to put them on there, but then you're also committed to say, okay, what are the top 4 things that we are going to make sure get done in the next 4 months? So let's say you got 10 things on there. Okay, you're like, okay, this one, and this one, and this one. Okay, now, what do we need to do? Who needs to own it? What needs to happen? Now you start talking it all through. Okay, now here's the beauty of it. For the next 4 months, what's going to happen is you're going to come back in the next week for that staff meeting, write all of them, write the 4 up there, whatever, and then the 6 remaining. Okay, now a couple things are really amazing. You're going to keep getting updates every week on how those 4 things are coming along. You're going to feel, as a lead pastor, at peace because you know these things are getting done. Your staff on a Sunday morning, when someone complains about something, can say, well, you know what, man, we're working on that. It's actually on our board right now, but we have a couple things that are in front of it. But yeah, thank you. Now they're out there advocating that, hey, we're working on these things. It's on our board. When you come back from a conference or you read a book or you have a coaching call or whatever, you've got this great idea and you're like, we need to implement it right away. You're all committed. We're already in the 4x4 process.
That's great.
So remember the remaining 6 that we had? Because we did 10. 4 of them go over to the 4x4 process. You still have 6 left over, but you come in with this great idea and everybody loves it. It goes into that 6 pile. Now you have 7.
Yeah,
When the
that's for sure.
when the 4 months is over and you finished it out, now you got 7. Choose your top 4 again. That list of the things you got to work on keeps growing, but it gives you a piece. It's up on the wall. We're gonna get to it. We just have 4 other things that are in front of it. It gives peace to everybody that you're not going to overwhelm them, that we know we're going to get to these things. We're just going to get to these things at the right pace. So we're working on these 4, and then that 6 becomes 8, 9, 10. When that 4 gets done, you're back to 10 or 11 or 12. You're like, okay, what's the top 4 now?
Yeah.
They go up, and then you just do it again. And it's a never-ending part of your staff.
That's great. That sounds a little daunting, right? Like,
Yes.
we're always gonna have a list.
Oh, yeah, don't we all?
Yeah.
I love it because it gives me peace. Because I
Yeah.
sit at a stoplight, or I'm taking a shower, or I'm on a long drive, and I'm coming up with 19 things that are bothering me. And I once I put them on the board, and everybody sees it, I'm like, all right, I'm good. It's on the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
We got 2 more months during our 4x4. I'll get to it in 2 months. And
That's great.
it way brings a ton of peace.
I bet.
Yeah, it does.
So is there any time where you're like, ooh, this wasn't on the 4, but it needs to jump up to the 4?
Yes. There are some rare occasions. I think maybe it wasn't there, but it's got to be traced or laced with emergency.
Yeah.
It's got to be like, wow, that's an emergency. We're not talking about we got to get ready for Christmas. We're not talking about, ready for Easter or whatever. Those are kind of normal function. I'm talking about when we need to repair something, rebuild something, or build it for the first time.
Yeah.
Rebuild the website, rebuild our assimilation, launch our leadership ladder. Those are big ticket items. That's going to take some work. Those are big ticket items that need to be rebuilt or built for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, something jumps up there, but you don't want to get it. Yes, but you don't want to get in the habit of it. It's got to be because it's got urgency written all over it.
For
Like,
sure.
man, we did not see this coming. Oh my gosh, we're going to a second service, and now that's in 3 months, and now we all got to go crazy about getting leaders and volunteers in place. Like all of a sudden, it's like, okay, this one on the 4x4 drops back down, goes back up. I wouldn't make it 5. It drops, but again, that's not the norm.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you're sticking with your 4x4.
That's good. That's good. I'm just taking some notes here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess our next question is our church has been growing. We're looking at a new space right now, and hopefully over the next coming months we'll be able to be in this space. But what are some things to look out for as you transition? Like I had a friend tell me, he was just like, hey, when we transition to our new space, like he's like, unfortunately people started being late because they don't have to set up and take down anymore. So they just started coming later. So what are some things that you've seen in building transitions that you're like, hey, be careful of this, or this would be
Yep.
great to implement?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is don't miss the wave. And what I mean by wave is Outreach Magazine said there's 3 reasons why churches see a jump. They see a jump from the new building, new renovation, or new service. New building, new renovation, new service. So if you call that, I live in Southern California, I surf every now and then, you call that, you don't like to miss that good wave. It's like you're
Right.
waiting for that right wave. I see guys miss the opportunity on a wave. Like, yeah, we just opened up a new building. I'm like, oh my gosh, or new service. I'm like, oh my goodness, you could have really got a lot of energy out of this. You could have moved the needle, but you didn't move the needle. So know that if you go into a new building, it could move the needle. How are you going to launch the new building? And then what are you going to do from that launch brings all those people? What are you going to do for the 0 to the next 90 days that's going to keep that momentum going? Everybody worries about day 1. I don't worry about day 1. I worry about day 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Like what's going to happen after the launch?
Yeah.
So that's one thing I think you need to consider. The part you need to be aware of is if you're not setting up and tearing down, people think they've arrived. And you got to teach your leaders and volunteers. We haven't arrived. We just climbed a mountain, and there's 20 more in front of us.
Yeah.
We're never stop climbing. We never stop growing. We never stop reaching. That's just who we are. So a building, when you move from set up and tear down to a building, it gives people this sort of promised land arrival. Like, we've arrived. Now we don't need to do anything. It's like, that's not it. The suggestion is, sometimes without them even noticing, is you start transitioning set up and tear down to a different team. Do that in advance. And man, if you're set up and tear down, okay, you got to stay in ministry. That's important. What ministry interests you? Where could we put you? Where, hey man, maybe you want to be a greeter, maybe usher. It's not time to stop. You might have less work because it's a lot easier, but don't stop. And if you can get 90% of your set up and tear down people into another ministry, or at least signed up for another ministry before you even get to that building, and headed in that direction, you'll find the ownership won't lessen.
Okay.
Because that's what's really lessening is ownership. People support what they create. So if they're creating, like I created the setup this morning. I created putting the signs out. They feel like they're part of it. People support it. The minute they stop creating it, they stop feeling like they're supporting it. So people support what they create. So move them into a position where they still feel like I'm still contributing. And you can do that. You do that through, you should serve. You do that through, let's not, you might say, hey, I will start, but I'm going to start a month after. I'm going to take a month off and not serve. That's okay. But make sure you sign up for something. Make sure you're part of a team, which, because you're not part of the setup, it doesn't mean you're not part of the team. If you transition them over, you'll avoid that lack of ownership and that feeling of not creating, et cetera.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Taking a ton of notes.
Yeah.
So how do you celebrate people? And I don't know if you've had this question before, but how do you celebrate people without showing favoritism? Because, there are some people, like, you get in the ministry, and then some people are rock stars. They can do it all, and they do it all so well. And you're like, if I celebrate them again, people are going to think, like, this is my only person. But how do you celebrate without showing favoritism?
Well, I would say you don't want to keep celebrating the same person, not because of favoritism, but because it shows that the bench isn't that deep. People, I think what gets rewarded gets repeated. So you got to find small wins for other people. And they may not be as big wins as this other guy, but they're still a win. Find the small wins for people. Secondly is the favoritism gets a little difficult. One thing I always love to say at Leadership Conference is that Jesus played favorites, and everybody's all, no, he didn't. I'm like, oh, yes, he did. Peter, James, and John. I always say, what if you were one of the 9 disciples? You know what I mean? It's like, what the heck? What's wrong with me? Why always those 3 guys?
Right. How come I can't go to sleep and pray with you? I mean,
exactly. But people, I think sometimes when I say it, they're like, yeah. I'm thinking, they're 9 human beings. You're telling me they weren't thinking, what the heck? They had to be thinking that. They're human. Right. They're perfect. But I think that's, I think there's part of that that's a little tough, It's not that you're trying to play favorites, but, you can only work with so many people. You can only invest in so many people. Now, I would say who you invest in could err on the side of favorites because hey, you can't invest in everyone. Yeah. Jesus had 3, Peter, James, John, then he had 12. Then after that, it was in the hundreds. I always say, who gets your personal time? Who gets your one-on-one time? Who gets your one-on-one time? Who gets your group time? Who gets your digital time? One-on-one, group, digital. You got to know that. So I don't think it's a matter of playing favorites. It's a matter of where is Jeremy's best time invested? Okay, that's where it is. Now, when you're publicly doing something, I think you got to search for smaller wins and search for smaller wins. I think the favorites most often will come out if you're constantly voicing someone in front of everybody. Right. Well, you're not really doing that when you're grab 3 guys, go to Starbucks, hang out, talk leadership. You're a little staff, you're a little this, you got a staff, you got an executive team, you got guys you're raising up to become, leaders in the future. You're apprenticing them. I don't think there's, there might be onesie twosies kind of, favoritism, like, whatever. And those conversations probably will happen, but you can avoid a lot of the public view of favoritism by seeking small wins and making them big. Get creative too in your leadership. If you're having leadership team meetings quarterly and volunteer meetings quarterly, you probably already are, but just get creative on how you give out the praise. I've seen all sorts of things. The Goliath Award. Who did something since the last time we met? They faced a Goliath and they crushed it. Like they had to raise up 10 volunteers and they did it. They built the First Impressions booth area and they did it. Like who gets the Goliath Award?
Right.
But just fun stuff to make it like, I don't know, just make it fun like that. But anyway, make sure them publicly, seek out the small wins privately. You got to know who you're investing in.
That's great.
You got to know, and who gets your personal time, one-on-one time, group time, digital time.
Do you limit how much time goes to each one? Like if you do one-on-one time and you're like, this is going to be a 2-hour thing or 3-hour thing, like how do you kind of mitigate how much time,
Well, that's an interesting question because most of the people that most of the people that would be more into my one-on-one time are high-level leaders who are respectful of their time and mine. And I'm not really spending a lot of one-on-one time with people if they're not high-level leaders. They're just not. Not one-on-one. And I normally don't run into that. So I don't know if I'd be able to answer that except for having an honest conversation. If you get someone that's really, really talkative and they just, whatever, if you're like, hey man, I just, so moving forward, I've always got to keep our times to 1 hour because it helps keep me on schedule. I think it's just being honest, but I don't run into that a lot.
That's good.
Most of these guys, they don't want to sit around and shoot the breeze. They're busy themselves. But it's important, though. It is important. I will say this, Jeremy, real quick. When you're talking one-on-one in group time, make sure you separate investing and spending. Those are two different words and two different outcomes.
Okay.
Spending is, hey, I grabbed 4 of my top guys, the ones I spent, whatever. And man, once a month we all go to pizza and then, I don't know, and then we shoot hoops, and for an hour and whatever. That's awesome. You guys have fun. You're laughing. You're cutting up. That's spending. It's important, but it's not investing. Investing looks totally different. You got to do both. But I think often people confuse investing and like, dude, I invest in my team all the time. Once a month we get together and have pizza and we shoot hoops or we do this or we do that or whatever they do. I'm like, that's great. Sounds like you're spending a lot of time with them, but you're not investing.
Yeah.
Just know the difference. Going through a book with them together, going through leadership with them together, apprenticing them. Helping them to become what, like I say, everybody on your lead team should be apprenticing someone. That way your bench is deep. Everybody's apprenticing someone. And how do you know you're apprenticing someone? You teach them to do what you do better than you do it. You're apprenticing. You're spending time with them. Like if I was the worship leader and you were an up-and-coming worship leader, I'm spending time with you maybe before rehearsal, after rehearsal, or before the service or after the service. Hey man, notice when I did this, notice how I dealt with the conflict, notice how when the church wasn't getting into it, I kind of brought up the energy. I'm spending time with you. Maybe we're going through a little book together during our little 30-minute time. I'm just making you a better leader, and I'm helping you not only in your leadership, but to understand how to do what I do.
Yeah, for sure.
Your team needs to help people understand what they do. That's totally different. But that's investing. I'm investing in you. Now, and the example I always give is investing in spending. Spending is very transactional and very quick. I go to a store, I don't know, whatever, 7-Eleven or something, and I buy a bottle of water. I give the guy a couple bucks. He gives me the water. The relationship's over.
Right.
Investing, I put $100 a month in my retirement. That's not going to do much in 6 months, but in 16 years, it's going to do a lot.
Yeah,
that's investing. So you're apprenticing someone for 6, 7, 8 months because you know the fruit that's going to come out of it.
So investing equals compound interest.
That's 100%. It's compound interest in leadership. Spending is you spend time with them, which is important. Go have fun, laugh with them, all that stuff, but don't confuse it with investing.
That's great. Chris, you did it again.
Oh, I don't know about that. Did it again.
You solved all my problems.
Oh, man, the whole world's problems have come to an end.
You did it again.
Well, man, anything else? Are we good?
No, that was great.
Oh,
that was
man.
great.
Thanks for being on today, man. I really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to be with you in a couple of weeks for a Rescue Sunday.
I know.
Thank you for your heart to rescue churches, man. But all right, buddy. Thanks, man. Have a good day.
All right, see ya.
Okay, bye-bye. Man, I hope that you really enjoyed the conversation that I just had with Jeremy. Lots of great stuff to learn there. Want to remind you to check out churchboom.org and to check out the Church Boom University. Lots of great content, master classes, books that are sent to you. It is an incredible ongoing leadership development platform for you. So go to churchboom.org and check out Church Boom University. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Instagram is church.boom. And Facebook is Church Boom, and there's a lot of content on there as well that I think you'll just love, and give an opportunity to connect with our platforms and with other people through that platform. So check out the Instagram and Facebook, and make sure to join us there. And we will see you on the next Fly on the Wall podcast.